All right, it's 9:20. Means it's 4:20 somewhere. So if you got one, spark up. All right, tonight I will be following up on the mass shooting over the weekend in Portland, the politically charged one. Um, they have a guy who has been charged, however, innocent until proven guilty. Um, but it is looking like he may have been the first one to shoot. Um, I don't know. I haven't seen video evidence or picture evidence to prove he was the first one to aim, um, which, if someone points a gun at me, I ain't gonna wait for you to shoot. I'm gonna shoot. So that is still up in the air, which is why, as I said, innocent till proven guilty. However, in one of the videos we're gonna go over, it appears dude is a little on the unstable side, and it turns out he's a furry, one of those weird motherfuckers who thinks they a cat or a dog or whatever the fuck. And they get all dressed up and get together with a bunch of other weirdos, and I ain't even gonna try to understand what the fuck they be doing. You know, like once you're past a child. Yeah, well, once you pass that toddler stage, that maybe a little older than 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. That's one thing, but once you get older than that, you're supposed to save shit like that for Halloween. Uh, but yeah, so let's get into it.
Now let's get to our big story. This past deadly weekend continues to hover over Portland like a toxic cloud that just won't go away. 3 days after a total of 10 people shot, 2 killed at 2 different awful events, we still have just a few answers. On top of that, police shot and killed another man over the weekend. Of particular concern, the 6 people shot and 1 killed here at Normandale Park in northeast Portland Saturday night. We now know a man living about a block away from the protest site was the one who police say opened fire. His name is Benjamin Smith. Late this afternoon, he was charged with murder and a number of other crimes. An arrest affidavit says that Smith approached a group of protesters, yelled at them, and demanded they leave the area. The protesters yelled back, and one of them pushed Smith after he confronted them aggressively. That's when Smith pulled out a gun and shot 5 people, including Brandy Lynn Knightley, also known as June.
Now, right there, they yelled back, and one of them pushed him. Big group of people, some of them armed. Now, granted, yeah, you went out there to confront them, so self-defense is gonna be a hard one to pull. However, you know, they get physical. They get physical with you. I don't know. I can't personally say I would have gone out to yell at them. Like, if you wanted them to stay off your property, go, do like the rooftop Koreans. Sit on your roof with your shit. They step on your property, give them, get the fuck off, or that's your ass. You know. But, yeah. I mean, it's a fuck situation altogether. As far as I know, nobody has proven any ties to any like right wing group or nothing. Like in actual ties, not he disagrees with me, he's a Nazi. Like, I want to see him associated with, carrying the flags, do whatever the fuck evidence that he's is this. But like I said though, we're gonna find out. He does have issues, and Well, let's keep going.
The affidavit says she was killed after being shot in the head at close range. Another person was shot in the neck and paralyzed from the waist down. Someone shot back at Smith and he was hit in the hip. He's in the hospital right now, but is expected to survive. Our Mike Benner is covering this and talked with both the police chief and the mayor today. Mike, let's start with something we criticized both of them for yesterday, not showing up at the park after the shooting or at that second shooting Sunday night. What'd they have to say about that?
So the second shooting Sunday night, that was a family driving down the road. They were refugees, I believe. I don't want to be inaccurate, so I'm not going to try to guess which countries they are from. I know they are from Africa. In fact, they're part of an organization that helps other African refugees, get set up and get assimilated and whatnot. However, that was a drive-by. They were driving, car pulled up, opened fire, kids in the car. A disgusting act nonetheless. But right now, where nothing's happened as far as nothing has come out as to whether it was mistaken identity, driving the same car as somebody's op, so they pulled up and just opened fire, or if it was, something else that was politically motivated, knowing that they were a part of this group, or I don't know. I mean, I've seen plenty of stories across the country where, taking too long to move at a green light, cutting someone off is enough for them to come up and shoot up your car. So that shooting is, tragic as well. Like I said, there were 2 young children in the car that both got shot. The man got shot and the woman got killed. Very tragic. But that is the second shooting he is referencing.
Mayor Ted Wheeler tackled that question, and he admitted no, he was not at Normandale Park. He was not in East Portland, where a mother and her kids were shot, and he was not in Southwest Portland, where police shot and killed someone. But he believes his absence should not be mistaken for a lack of caring. He says quite the opposite, in fact. He says he and his team have been working around the clock, and they've been doing so in collaboration with law enforcement. Take a listen.
I disagree with your characterization that we did nothing or that we haven't been present. I believe we have. I hear the anger and the frustration, and maybe more than anything else, the fear that people are expressing. And they need to know that their mayor...
This mayor, he's a joke. He, when the feds came in, he wanted to join the protests and all that, even though the people who were down there protesting were like, yo, you gotta go. Like, if I'm not mistaken, there was even an attempt to set his apartment building on fire. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I know that protests have showed up to his apartment or condo, penthouse, whatever the fuck he lived in. But yeah, this guy, he is a putz.
Takes this seriously, that I am prioritizing it, that I'm working with any partner who will work with me to address this issue. And that's what I've been doing all weekend, is working with people who will work with me to move towards a Portland where people don't have to look over their backs anymore.
Late this afternoon, we got an affidavit that spells out some of what police think happened. But Mike, you're a veteran crime beat reporter. A lot of people want to know, why does it take so long? Why does it take 3 days to get some of these details out?
Well, investigations of this magnitude take time. They don't necessarily move along quicker because there are a lot of eyes on the case or a lot of people are talking about it on social media. Mayor Ted Wheeler, DA Mike Schmidt, Chief Chuck Lavelle will be the first to tell you that they cannot get wrapped up in the high-profile nature of the case. Their job is to build a case, and that takes time, and they will release information when they can and not a minute sooner. The last thing they want to do is release information too quickly and then have to walk it back because the investigation took a different turn. Pat?
All right. Thank you, Mike Benner. Last night, we asked you to weigh in on the shootings and Portland leaders' responses to them. We set up a voicemail line for this show, 503-2...
So they're going to go over, they're kind of irrelevant. They're just going to have a couple people leave their messages. And most of them didn't have anything to do with these particular shootings, just people, saying either, the mayor's not doing enough about the violence, the mayor's doing too much, or the mayor's doing everything he can, like variation. And then you have people who are also saying that they're scared to leave their house. Big part of that is, well, on the mayor. 2019, I believe Portland had 32 homicides. 2020, that jumped up to 52, with the majority happening from June to December. If we all remember what happened in that time frame as well, there was the 100 consecutive days of protests. In an attempt to defund the police. And then last year it was 92. And this year they're projecting to beat that. And that's just the homicides. There was over 1,000 shootings. And of course, what are we gonna do about the guns? We have a gun problem. We don't have a gun problem. We have a people problem. I have 2 guns. I've had one for 4 years, one for 5 years. Neither one of those guns has killed anybody. So either those guns are failing, or it's not the guns, it's the people they're in the hands of. But let's get back to
this. Those are obviously very real fears that we know so many people in the city have right now, especially in areas where shootings are happening outside people's front doors every night. We do hear you, and that's why we're going to keep pressuring city leaders to do better. As we learn more about the awful shooting Saturday night at Normandale Park, you may have noticed the reporting that revealed someone with the protesters had a rifle and shot the gunman to stop his rampage, which made some of us and some of you wonder, who brings a rifle to a protest?
Even though he's showing this old picture, this is how this isn't publicly known. I mean, there's videos from inside Portland. It's happened on a few occasions. I know of one instance where there was several armed guys with rifles, which, hey, 2A, I'm all for it, by all means. But once you start using your rifles to halt traffic, now you're doing too much. And there's a video of a guy who had got out of his truck with a gun of his own. 5 of them jumped him and took his gun. So they, like I said, I support, by all means, I support your right to peacefully protest, and I support your right to peacefully protest with your rifles. But when you're using your rifles to intimidate people into you're not driving through, you're doing too much.
Well, it turns out it's not that unusual. Someone shared this picture from the Hawthorne district of Portland last April when a group took over an intersection, blocked traffic, and insisted everyone listen to their point of view. Let's zoom in on the person toward the front. See the rifle there? Now, an obvious question is, can you do that? The answer is, yeah, maybe. We checked with law. In much of Oregon, you can carry a loaded gun in public as long as it's not concealed, unless you have a permit. But Portland and
again, to be clear, my personal opinion is every gun law in the books is an infringement on our Second Amendment rights, and therefore, in my opinion, is null and void. And it should be our duty to disobey. But yeah.
Multnomah County have stricter laws, and while you can also carry a gun in public here, it must be unloaded, and the clip for the ammo must be unloaded as well. So it depends on whether that gun was loaded or not.
So essentially, if you have a gun, you can't have any bullets in the magazine. So if somebody who doesn't care about the law decides to come after you with a gun, you got to load your bullets into the magazine and then load it into the gun and hope they haven't killed you yet.
We've had other examples of gun toting by protest supporters and those who don't like them. In the spring of 2020, a man named Aaron Danielson, a supporter of the right-wing group Patriot Prayer, was shot and killed by a man named Michael Reinhold after protests and rallies in downtown Portland. Reinhold was a self-described anti-fascist who said he provided security for racial justice protests in Portland. He was later shot and killed by U.S. Marshals who were trying to arrest him. I'm not trying to compare that shooting to Saturday night, but I am
And I'm not going to compare them and say in the sense that they're the same. I'm going to compare them in the sense that both were politically charged, which he is also going to say here in a second. And it's what I'm talking about in the original video when I say the political violence is escalating. The body counts is rising. And it's something that we have to get under control, or we're going to hit a point of no return. And nobody really wants that. There's a lot of people who say they do. And most of them, once their family members start getting hit up, will probably wish otherwise.
Out that both were politically charged and both involved guns. Now, I'm sure the people gathering at this past Saturday would say, thank heaven somebody had a rifle, or even more people could have been shot. And that may well be true. But am I the only one who finds all this shocking?
It's funny. Not that people got shot. But, the red team, the red wing of the corporate government, they have the famous line, only thing stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, which is true. Whether it's police or a regular citizen, if somebody is wanting to do harm to people, it's gonna take somebody else, or it's gonna take a group of people to charge them, and people ain't gonna make it. But the quickest and best way to do it is with a gun. They're actually acknowledging that right now.
Have we really reached the point where people rallying for something or against something have to bring their own rifle squad to make sure they have the firepower to match the potential threat from the other side? I'm afraid the Saturday night shows the answer is yes. That picture from last April says it's been going on for a while. I don't want to believe that, but that doesn't mean it's not true. And I'm not sure what it means for our city and the chances of a peaceful future. What are your thoughts? We're a different sort of news program. We do want to hear from you. You can email me at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5059.
This was a deadly, difficult, and disturbing weekend for our city.
Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler speaking publicly for the first time since the violent weekend in Portland. The mayor was joined at a virtual press conference Tuesday by federal and local law enforcement officials, including Portland Police Chief Chuck Lavelle.
This was probably one of the most deadly and challenging weekends our city has experienced. It's also one of the most heartbreaking.
Among the deadly shootings the chief is referencing is the one at Normandale Park. The chief describes a confrontation between armed resident Ben Smith and armed protesters that left 60-year-old Brandy Knightley dead.
This was a very challenging and dangerous scene for many tactical reasons. Obviously, responding officers didn't know who the shooters were, how many, where they were at, and other details.
Aside from saying evidence was taken from the scene and asking for its prompt return.
And that's another part of why I can't just, bite into the first narrative. Evidence was taken from the scene, and I forgot to mention in the last video, but there were accounts online, people linked with Antifa saying, hey, scrub your phones, delete pictures, delete videos, don't talk to the police. Which is why, like I said, allegedly and innocent until proven guilty. Because if they had a video of him coming out and acting all crazy and then just opening fire, which I'm sure somebody there had a video. If he came out yelling all crazy, there's no way someone didn't record him. Especially since many of them seem to know who he is. Like, you would think they would record that shit. And, so I find that suspicious. That no video has surfaced of the incident. Especially because I know a lot of these protests are usually live streamed. People recording all types of shit. So that's why, like I said, innocent till proven guilty and alleged. I just don't want to say, yes, this is exactly what happened. This is boom, 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 boom. And then later on down the road, evidence comes out that proves the contrary. And then I have to eat my words. So, but that was a big thing, the removal of evidence and going on, and deleting evidence.
Obviously, responding officers didn't know who the shooters were, how many, where they were at, and other details.
Aside from saying evidence was taken from the scene and asking for its prompt return, authorities are saying very little about the shooting. Some will argue that's a calculated move to control the narrative, but Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt says that's not the case at all.
Our biggest responsibility is to build a case and make sure that those who cause harm are held accountable. That's what our focus is.
DA Schmidt's office, along with local and federal investigators, will be tasked with determining a motive behind the deadly shooting. Here's what the U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon said when asked about the possibility of this being a hate crime.
If evidence is developed that any federal crimes were committed there, the United States Attorney's Office will.
I don't see. The woman who died was white. Most of Antifa is white. I don't know. I don't know all the victims, but I don't see how it. I don't know. I think that's a stretch and probably won't go through.
Make the decision whether federal charges should be brought.
For now, we're asked to remember the victims of the weekend violence.
I want to note with deep sadness the injuries and the terrible loss of life the collective Portland family has endured. I'm grieving along with those who've been impacted by this weekend's events.
Authorities acknowledge it has been difficult getting some of the witnesses to talk to them about what happened at Normandale Park. Officials want to remind those witnesses that providing information to law enforcement is absolutely crucial, and anonymous tips can be passed along through Crime Stoppers. I'm Mike Benner for KGW News.
Now to the latest on the shooting of 5 people at the Northeast Portland Park Saturday night. The Oregonian newspaper is reporting that the suspect in the case, Benjamin Smith, made some disturbing threats 16 years ago. The paper reports that in 2006, Smith lashed out at a software engineer in Oklahoma.
So this is the video where, like I said, they're going to go over some of this dude's background. And like I said, it is quite possible that he, just went out there and said, fuck it, open fire. I'm not saying that's not.
They report that he was mad at the engineer because the guy's company didn't give Smith the right software that he had purchased. Yes, it was a while ago, but I do think it's relevant, so stay with me. According to the Oregonian, Smith demanded the old program be returned, and then when it wasn't, he started issuing threats to the engineer online, including the chilling promise that he was going to actually take a road trip to Oklahoma and that when the engineer stepped outside his house, Smith would stab him. He apparently also sent the engineer pictures of guns and knives and said he would go to the engineer's home. The engineer reported those threats to the FBI. He told the paper the feds noted the complaint was received, but that was it. 4 years later, in an unrelated case, Smith was convicted in Multnomah County for criminal mischief and harassment. Why does all that matter? Because it seems like every time something like a mass shooting happens, it appears to come right out of the blue, until we learn the background of the suspect. And then we see that there were actually breadcrumbs to follow if anyone was interested or available. Why didn't any law enforcement pick up on clues from this guy? Those threats to the Oklahoma software engineer sure seem like a red flag in my opinion. We wanted to know what the FBI in Portland knew about him and whether anything was done back then. So we sent an email to the local office. We asked, how many complaints have been submitted to the FBI about Smith? What kind of threshold exists for the FBI to take action after these kinds of complaints are submitted? And how many complaints or tips does the FBI act on in an average week? The response we got back was, well, let's say less than informative. Actually, we used different words back in the newsroom when it came in, but those are the ones that we can use on the air. The response read, I don't have any answers that I can share with you right now. If that changes, I will let you know. I later did get a second email showing the FBI in Portland gets about 1,000 complaints a year. So that is a lot, and maybe you think I'm full of it and being too hard on the FBI. I don't think so. We may disagree on this. We do hope for a more complete response from the FBI soon. But come on, it should not be a state secret whether or not this guy was checked out by the FBI back then. And hey, if they did check him out, talked with him, found he was full of hot air and not dangerous, fine. But I think we have a right to know that. But also, what if nothing was done? We should know that too. And I can't shake the nagging feeling that if someone from law enforcement somewhere along the way had checked him out, maybe something would have been done about all the guns he had. And maybe that alteration Saturday night would have resulted in bruises instead of bullet holes and death.
And that's where he's wrong. Only thing that could have prevented that would be locking him up. Because had the FBI or the police taken his guns, you can get a gun on the street faster than you can get a gun in the store. And you don't need an ID, no background checks, nothing. So if this guy really wanted to own guns, he was going to be able to own guns. So, which is why, like I said, gun control only really hurts, law-abiding people who, aren't out for nefarious reasons, and when I say it hurts them, so, for example, Saturday, I had went to make a couple of purchases at the gun store. And I likely won't be receiving those purchases till, because for one of them, I have to wait 10 business days. And because Monday was a bullshit holiday, that day didn't count. So, I might end up waiting not till this coming Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. And that's fine. I have other guns. It's just an inconvenience for me. I wanted to go to the range this weekend. Not gonna be able to do it with my new guns. But what about a woman who finally leaves an abusive relationship? Goes out, gets her own place, knows her ex is gonna come stalk her out, so she wants to go buy a gun so she can protect herself should he show up. Let's see. 7, 14, 15, 16, 17. I'm going to end up waiting 17 days for mine. most people will end up waiting 14 days. Like I said, the holiday fucked me. And the fact that I bought on a weekend as well didn't help. But yeah, most people are going to wait 14 days. In my case, 17. A lot can happen in that time. That woman's ex can find her in that time. And because she decided to go the legal route, bad things could happen to her. And there will be people who will say, oh, but what about the ex? We got to prevent him from being able to get the gun. Well, as I already said before, you can get a gun on the street with a couple of phone calls if you know the right people in under an hour. No ID required, just cash. So that is a prime example of how gun control, because this weight I have, the extended weight, is partially due to some recent bills that my state has unfortunately passed. So that is where, this news guy has been doing a good job covering this without partiality, if you will. He's been impartial about it. But that is where he's wrong. Like I said, the only way thing that would have prevented this is if the guy was a little turns out he's a furry as well. I personally haven't seen anything other than people making the claim. But, it is possible. Dude, like I said, he seems off the hinges, like not mentally all there. If you going through all that shit over some software, fucking threatening them, sending pictures, all that, like, I don't know. Either way, locking him up or getting him some type of treatment would have been the only thing to prevent this. Taking away his guns, taking away his ability to go to a gun store and buy a gun wouldn't have stopped this. So like I said, a phone call and some cash, and you can get a gun in an hour or two, depending on who you know.
What do you think? Am I out of line? Let me know. There's a chance I am, but I don't think so. Maybe you do agree. Either way, I'd like to hear from you. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. Call and leave a voicemail, or you can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com.
I might have to leave a voicemail and tell him about himself. But, so yeah. So that is where the update on the Portland mass shooting from the weekend. Like I said, there's no concrete evidence because there is missing evidence. But it's not looking good for Mr. Smith. And you know what? If it went the way they say it did, where he just came out and just cussed them out and then pulled his gun and started shooting, good. I hope it doesn't go good for him. But like I said, until all the evidence is actually available, I say innocent till proven guilty. And my opinion on the matter is, I don't know. But let me know what you think. If you have any more information or know the person, know people who know people, by all means, please leave that in the comments. I am trying to find more information about this guy, and that's not coming from a biased perspective, trying to just paint this horrid image just for the sake of painting the horrid image. But yeah, I want to know what went down that night, because like I said, the reason this interests me is, one, it's in a further escalation of political violence that's already been escalating right across the river from me. So, yeah, it's important because, like I said, once we hit a point of no return, then it gets ugly. And then the government gets even more authoritarian than they already are. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Other than that, y'all have a nice night. Thanks for watching. Stay blazing.